What I do know is that Will Hayes and Joe are here. What's happening, guys? This is Questions with the Coach, man. Yeah, dude, I know. Gilbert gave me this shirt when he worked there. I didn't pay for it. I feel like I owe the school money. You know, you feel this allegiance to your like high school because when you're there, they're like, "Oh, we need donations," and you're like, "Forget that, man. As soon as I'm out of this place, never see you again. I'm gonna dust get the crap of this school off my shoes and go see the world." And not that I felt that way about my high school, but because I really didn't. But you know how it is, man. Once you graduate, you think you own the world and stuff, and then after about 10, 15, 20 years, we just had a 20-year reunion. You're like, "Yeah, that was a good place to go to. I'm glad I went to high school there." So yeah, I am wearing a high school shirt. I wore this shirt earlier to work out, and I didn't shower in between. So, ugh, yeah. Well, speaking of not wearing clean shirts, Will Hayes, how you doing, buddy? Living the dream, I hope. Quarantine, man, the quarantine blues. Although it seems like things are going to start lightening up here a little bit. So, according to the Lightfoot. Oh, sorry, Will, I didn't mean to talk politics. I know how you get, man. Cocoa is brown and white. Yeah, that's true. Every time someone pukes in my Uber. Dude, so that's a good story. My good friend Joe. I had this thing, I never drank in high school, never had a drop, but I would drive people places. And friends drank, we used to go to parties, we used to hang out, do all this great stuff. And sure enough, man, not going to say who, someone has to throw up in my car. And it was just like one of those like, A, I'm not drinking, so I'm not having nearly as much fun. B, I'm not being obnoxious because I'm not drunk. And then C, you're in my car and you throw up. That's how you know you're good friends. Like normally that guy deserves to get his ass beat, but it's not what happened. What happened going forward was I have no problem driving anywhere around. I would just use their car. So I was like, you can puke all you want, man, as long as you don't puke on me. Joe, it's payback is what it is. Donnie, no, more Mount Carmel stuff. I feel like I wore the Mount Carmel stuff, and that's why the Mount Carmel guys are filling it in, man. Saw the graduation on the old, the new stadium turf. That's kind of cool, man. I hope those cars didn't leave permanent damage, man, because I like that stadium, and I hope they use it for going forward. I hope they have high school football this year, man. These are crazy days we're living. Donnie Butkus, are you still here, man? You went to St. Francis, right? How did that go? I really don't know. I heard you played college and football in college. Last time I saw you, you were nursing an ankle at the state game. That's how far back we go. Does anybody have any questions, like fitness-related stuff? That's why we're here. I mean, I could talk Mount Carmel all day. I really can. It's kind of cool, too, because it seems like most of the people on my Facebook feed are like Mount Carmel alum or somehow associated. And then you can't get away from the school, especially living in the south side of Chicago. Like I just saw one of their baseball players is highly touted. I think he was like the Gatorade, maybe Illinois or someone player of the year or something like that. And then a guy from Mount Carmel had won it just 2 years before that, Alec Thomas. So kind of cool, man. Kind of great school to be from, you know. I came to Mount Carmel as a boy. I cared, I worked, I struggled at it. And look at me. I'm like a man now. I'm a man. That's a inside Mount Carmel joke. Good. Back, we went from 4 people to 0. That's awesome. We got topics today. I'm here to talk health and fitness, but apparently I'm here to talk about anything. You know, you got something, you shoot it out, I'll shoot it right back. I just made a video for. In fact, let me go ahead and include the link in the comments here. I want you guys to check this out. I'm very proud of what I did. I put it on my Facebook Live, but on my Facebook feed. But you tell people that, and they're like, "Yeah, I'll go check it out," and they never do. So, my videos. I want to share with the world. Nope, don't want to play. Bear with me as I grab this URL for you. Kapow! Put it in the comments. Yeah, it's the first video I made with like a recipe and stuff like that. And I'm trying to work at it. And you see all those zillion-dollar companies pumping those things out like every single day. Well, I'm trying to get into that game. I made an ebook. I made a recipe. One of my favorite recipes, the Green Dream, as I call it. It's awesome. I dig it. I would love for you to check it out. Check out that video. The recipe's in there. The recipe is also in this week's newsletter, man. Joe, good seeing you, buddy. Swing through again, man. Friday, 2 o'clock, I try, but whenever, man. We'll just do it whenever. You got my number, dude. Just be in touch. So, what is the first topic of today? First topic of today is juicing versus smoothies. And first of all, you must know the difference in order to be able to talk knowledgeably about it, which that's my plan, to talk knowledgeably. Do I have to be so far away? Um, that's my plan, to talk knowledgeably. Knowledgeably? That's the word you don't want to mess up when you're trying to sound knowledgeable. But juicing versus smoothies. Juicing, you need a juicer. I had a Jack LaLanne juicer forever. Fruits, vegetables, crank them through. Only a handful of things you really shouldn't put in there. Avocados, bananas, anything that's mushy. You wouldn't throw an onion in there. That'd be stupid. So, but for the most part, it extracts the nutrients and gets rid of the pulp. And you drink it, you love it, you go about your merry way. Smoothies, on the other hand, are just blenders. So, masticating, I believe is the word. That's what we do when we chew. So we're I hope I'm not saying that wrong, because I hate to sound like an idiot for all one person that's watching, or on tape delay. But that means you'd have to have gotten this far. Doesn't matter. The point is, when we chew our food, we swallow it. The blender actually does the chewing for us. So that's one less step in the digestive process. The body can absorb the nutrients quicker, and you drink the smoothie, you go about your merry way. So what's the difference between the two? Obviously, one of the negative drawbacks of juicing is that it extracts the pulp, therefore it takes the fiber out. So can you live on juice alone? Yeah, you can. I did it. I did it for 30 days straight. How long would you would lose a significant amount of weight, but your body does need fiber, and fiber slows down some of the absorption process, which is actually a good thing over time, because your body, when overloaded with a bunch of things, can only take so much out of it, and the rest of it kind of gets kicked back or gets kicked out, and you don't fully absorb the nutrients the way you could. So does that mean that smoothing is better than juices? No, I think juices are better than smoothies. Depends on what you're trying to do. But like, for instance, if I'm going to have, like, if I need some additional protein, I want to make my own smoothie, I'm going to throw a scoop in the blender, not in the juicy drink. Juicing is primarily juices and vegetables. You throw protein powder on top of that, it's just not going to taste right. On the other hand, if you got your milk or your water, your protein, a couple, handful of berries, maybe some, spinach, maybe some nuts, blend it up, drink it. Those smoothies are great. Again, it's liquid form, so you absorb the nutrients a little bit faster. Is there a difference between the two? No, you're arguing like the finer points of health. Like, if that's your big thing, you're like, well, I want to decide, I'm not sure which one I should do. Should I smooth or should I juice? And I don't know the difference between the two. And it's like, well, okay, you probably have a bad diet anyway, and you're looking for something to undo the damage that you've already done. You can't go wrong with smoothies and juices, all right? So pick one, go with it. If you have a juicer, great. If you want a juicer, go buy one. You don't have to get the best one on the market. Those juicers can be $300-$400 sometimes. I've seen those are like the Cadillac of juicers. But my Jack LaLanne, which I had for, God, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. I had it for a long time. You can find those for under $100 now. It's an essential piece of kitchen appliance equipment if you want to juice, which I'm always interested in doing. Big Tony's in the house. Maddie Sip, what's going on? Just talking juices and smoothies. And you probably already have a blender. So if it's cost prohibitive for you to focus on your health, use your blender, get some smoothie recipes, start with that. If you really enjoy it and you want to step up your game, maybe a great way to start the day would be with a nice juicy drink. Get your vegetables, get your produce, quickly absorb it, then you go get a juicer. So start with what you have, see if it's something that's for you. If you do decide to go buy a juicer, you don't need the Cadillac of juicers. You can get a centrifugal juicer. Don't believe the hype when people are talking about how it generates heat and the heat kills all the enzymes and all the other stuff. That's going to prevent you from thinking, well, all right, you're going to get paralyzed by analysis and sitting there, and don't worry about any of that stuff. So the smoothies and juices are both good for you. In fact, click on that video or go to CoachPotts.com, sign up for the newsletter. I have recipes for both. I've got 5 of each. I've tried them all. I like them all. They're good recipes. You're going to enjoy the drink. In fact, you're going to enjoy it at such a rate that you're going to say to yourself, why didn't I do this earlier? And I'm going to say that's because you didn't sign up for my newsletter earlier. I had my newsletter going for about 2 months now. Where have you been? Blame yourself. Go do push-ups. Secondly, because I don't see any questions. Why? Probably because most of the people signing in and looking at this live is going, who's this lunatic? I'm not going to ask him a question about how to not be crazy. He doesn't have the answer to that. Guy's a loon ball. No, I'm a little juiced on coffee right now. It tastes great. I shouldn't say it tastes great. That was my lunch. Caught in the back chamber there. I shouldn't say it tastes great. I got these cups from Costco. I loaded up. Hey, man, you got to go Costco shopping when we're in a quarantine, right? and I've just been sipping on the old K-Cups. I did Caribou coffee this time. Not my favorite. Not my favorite. I should have got the Starbucks coffees or the Dunkin' Donuts ones. Either or. I go back and forth between the two. I 1 and 2 with Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, but Caribou solid 3, if not lower. I might even put Pete's at number 3. That's what happens, man. When you don't drink alcohol, you become a coffee snob. Super annoying, I know. Let's move on. Second question was how to deal with injury. So I don't know how to deal with injury. I'm one of those guys that's just like, you just got to play through it, right? But this is what I would say. And the reason I say, like, specifically, I don't know how to deal with injury is because I'm not a physical therapist. So if you're injured and you need specific if you need specific exercises to get that injury back, so you're at a rate that you feel comfortable and you're willing to start working out again, go see a physical therapist. That's what they do. Unlike personal training, a lot of insurances will cover our physical therapy up to a point. You know, I doubt they're going to give you 100% coverage. They may, and if they do, keep going. If not, go a couple times, get the exercises you need, go home, do them on your own. That's what they do. They tell you, well, they actually don't even diagnose the injury. They'll send you to a doctor for that. Once you get the injury, they'll say you need to do these exercises in order to get you up to speed faster. That's what you should do. Personal trainers, on the other hand, when you're at a healthy rate or you have an injury that you know you can work through, that's when you come see a personal trainer. When I tell everybody when it comes to pain, rate everything on a scale of 1 to 10. If it's a 1, 2, or 3, you could probably push through it. You might have to make some adjustments. 4, 5, or 6, you're going to limit whatever it is you're doing. You're going to, like, if it's a shoulder injury, we're doing lower body that day. If it's an ankle injury, you know, we're not doing anything that requires a lot of impact. But if it's a 7, go see a doctor. Don't be a hero. Don't wait for that 8 or 9. And then always remember, number 10, that's snapping your femur. So if you have like a toothache and you're like, I think that's a 10, I'd be like, well, that's because you never snapped your femur before. That's actually a 10. Toothache, probably a 7 or 8. Although I've had some bad toothache, so I feel you. What do we do when we actually have an injury, though? Okay, like I said, I'm not going to diagnose your injuries. It's not what I do. I'm not going to tell you specific exercises you do in order to get that injury to get better. But what I am going to tell you is use an acronym: RICE, Rest, Ice, Compression, Elevation. I wish I had my whiteboard. RICE, Rest, Ice, Compression, Elevation. And you'll find that that will help with 80% of the injuries that you have that are acute, meaning if you twist an ankle or, you know, you're trying to tackle someone and all of a sudden the shoulder's not feeling the way it used to, or, you know, you're diving for a loose ball and you pull a muscle in your neck, or your pillow's just old. I'm having issues with my neck lately, and I really feel it's because of the quality of my pillow. That's one thing that can sneak up on you, and you're like, man, that's a good point. I haven't changed my pillow out in years. Thanks for the like, whoever did that. But your pillow, and that's another thing with running shoes too. Like, you know, you run, or even like shoes that you walk on. You're like, well, I'm running on them, and it's like, well, I'm having low back issues. Well, why don't you try swapping your shoes out? You know, you've had the same pair of shoes for 10 years. You cheap Pollock man, go buy something. You know, I realize most stores are closed, but you can order them on the internet, and they don't have to be anything fancy. You know, we're talking about health here. Get some new shoes. But rest, ice, compression, elevation. Rested obviously means lay off of it. Ice, go get a bag of ice, do something like that. Usually with ice, it's 20 minutes on, 10 to 20 minutes off. You could do that 2-3 times in a row. You could rest. You could do that 2 to 3 times a day. Ice, what ice does is actually it brings blood flow to that area. The more blood flow you can get to that area, the faster it's going to heal. It's really, really good at and not just reducing swelling, but let's say you already have something that's swollen, it can prevent it from getting larger, and it will help in the long run. So if it's an acute injury, you want to get ice on it right away. Let me tell you what you're going to do. If you're walking on the street, and this has happened to me before, I hate to admit it, and I've actually twisted my ankle, what you do is you tie your shoelaces as tight as you possibly can, and I would say run, but you have a bad ankle. So you get to the nearest location that has ice and you put it on there as fast as possible. Otherwise, that ankle is going to blow up. Same thing with any injury that you could possibly think of that's going to have swelling. Like if you bang your knee into like a rail or something like that, do whatever you can to get ice on it as soon as possible, because it's either going to, you know, it's not going to necessarily reduce the swelling right away, but hopefully it's going to prevent it from getting larger, because what happens is once it gets larger, like that actual swelling, it's going to prevent range of motion, it's going to delay how long it's going to take to repair, etc., so forth, blah, blah, blah. So rest, obviously lay off it, ice, as soon as possible. And then over time, they say make the transition to heat, although a lot of the heat therapy you'd have to talk to a physical therapist or most likely an athletic trainer who deals with this stuff on a daily basis. It seems like they're getting away from the heat therapy, and this is proved to known. You've probably seen this. It's kind of a cliche thing now, where you see a lot of athletes taking ice baths. Ice seems to be the predominant prescription for not only just taking care of injuries, but also reducing inflammation, taking care of muscle soreness, all that type of stuff. Ice is the way to go. It sucks. I prefer heat, but ice is ideally what they say. Who knows? It might change. Preferential over heat, and it's something that you want to do right away as soon as the injury occurs. So that's ice. Compression, obviously wrapping things up. The thing about wrapping it up, again, it's going to help increase blood flow to that area. In some cases, what it'll do, just that feeling of compression will alleviate some of the symptoms of pain. So like wearing the knee sleeve, wearing an elbow sleeve, all that type of stuff, just that squeezing right there just makes that joint feel better, which allows you to push through whatever it is you're trying to do that day. So if you're doing shoulder presses and you got issues with your elbows, throw your elbow sleeve on. For the shoulder presses, just do it like that, and then all of a sudden you'll notice that the pain wasn't quite as bad. I'll do a lot of times with my knees if I'm doing deep squats or heavy squats, but I don't wear them all the time. I wear them when I need them. Otherwise, you just look like a goofball walking around with elbow sleeves and knee sleeves and a weight belt on and your hat backwards and wrist wraps on, and then they're like, "Who's that guy?" And I'm like, "He's one of those." And you're like, "Oh, one of those? Yeah, stay away from him." But compression, you'll see. Another thing too is it limits the range of motion. So you can't. If I have a like an elbow sleeve on, I can't always bend my elbow the entire way. It kind of gets uncomfortable, and it's always attempting to kind of keep my elbow straight. So reducing the range of motion also will help alleviate some of the symptoms of pain at the joints area as well. So compression is always a good idea. Nice thing to do too if you have an injury is to put ice on it and then wrap it around, so you don't have to worry about it falling off, or as soon as the ice starts to melt, kind of not covering the designed area. Let's continue. And elevation is the last one. So anytime, and those primarily obviously refer to lower body injuries. I guess you could. I guess in a sling, if your shoulder's bothering you and you got your arm in a sling, stuff like that. Although you'll see they don't do slings like they used to. They kind of want you to start introducing full range of motion as early as possible. Immobilization doesn't seem to be as beneficial as attempting to work through the motion, whatever the injury might be. I went like this as if it's going to be a shoulder injury. Whatever injury it might be, you'll see that they don't do immobilization as much as they used to. That doesn't mean they couldn't, but if you have like a bad ankle, it's not a bad idea to prop that foot up as you're icing it, or at the end of a hard day, man, just putting your feet up. I wish I could do that right now, but I get a camera in front of my face. It's taking up my area that I put my feet up. But wow, look at the time. Woo! Rest, ice, compression, elevation, that'll take care of about 80% of the injuries that you're going to incur. Again, rated on a scale of 1 to 10. If it's 1, 2, or 3, you might be able to push through. 3, 4, 5, or 6, you're probably going to have to make some changes. If it's a 7, go see a doctor. Don't be a hero. 10 is snapping your femur, for a frame of reference. And then what's better, juicing or smoothies? You can do either, man. You can do either. They both serve a little bit of a difference they both serve a little bit of a difference because you can throw anything in a blender, but you can't throw anything in a juicer. But it all boils down to nutrient absorption, and introducing at least 1 or 2 smoothie or juicy drinks a day is a good idea for you. It's healthy. It makes you feel better. They taste great. What do you mean they taste great? Well, I have these recipes. I don't know if I mentioned them earlier, but they are on my website. They're actually in the newsletter. All you do is sign up for the newsletter, send you the ebook. You got those recipes. Try them out. Give me some feedback. Let me know. I plan on doing some more ebooks. I plan on doing some more questions with the coach, but God knows why. Nobody actually pays attention anyway. Or do you? Nobody asking any questions? I'm just playing. This has been Questions with the Coach. I'll post this on YouTube if you don't catch it on Facebook, but thanks for sticking around, and enjoy your weekend, Memorial Day weekend. Get some. Grill. Go grill, man. That's what you should do. Talk about that some other time. So I got some grilling recipes. Maybe I'll put an ebook together for grilling. Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be cool.